Hello and welcome back to the Cardiff Central podcast and another bombshell week in Welsh rugby, this time focusing on the Arms Park as Matt Sherratt leaves on the eve of the new season. We'll be discussing his time at the club, where it leaves Cardiff and what is next for us. There's also a look back at pre-season, Rags Corner as they face Carmarthen, and a preview of this weekend's URC opener against the Lions. On the panel this week, we've got Andrew Ford joining me. Fordy, how are you?
Yeah, very good, mate.
Good stuff. And Tony Esposito. Tony, how are you?
Uh, Dejected, but all right.
Yeah, it's been one of those weeks. So it was all going well. We woke up on Monday with the scent of the new season in the air. And then bang, the news drops that Matt Sherratt is going to depart his role as Cardiff head coach with immediate effect to take over as Wales attack coach. It brings to an end his second spell at the club. He was, of course, attack coach between 2016 and 2018 with Danny Wilson. Returned to the club as backs and attack coach in 2021 under Di Young, and then took over as head coach in the summer of 2023 when Young departed. Um, since then, he's overseen 13 wins and two draws. A draw in each season seems quite impressive. And is now going to join Steve Tandy's coaching ticket ahead of the autumn internationals. 4D coming to you first. Just sort of general reflection on Jockey's time at the club.
Oh yeah, obviously did kind of two stints. So I think there's fond memories of both stints and the way he was almost parachuted in after Di Young left. I think he did a great job, and especially the players he's managed to develop, the young players who are now kind of starting week in, week out. Can only thank him for his contribution.
4D, same. Sorry, Tony, same question to you.
Yeah, he was dropped into what seems to be standard for a Cardiff coach now, the absolute mire. But he's come up smelling the roses. He's got us playing rugby where we look like we're trying to win games, whereas I don't think that was the case with previous managers all the time. And like Fordy said, bringing through those lads that he has and having the success with kids who have come through our academy, it it's noticeable the atmosphere on the terraces and why we're getting the attendances we are is because we're playing attractive rugby with kids from the area. Like,
Yeah, and I put out on the Cardiff Central social media stuff to ask for people's thoughts as well, and we had probably the most responses we've ever had. Read a couple of them out as I've taken the effort to write them all down. Hugh says, given the resources at his disposal, he's done a terrific job bringing a mentality, culture, and style of play that brought hope to all supporters. Dave Allen says, achieved a huge amount while on starvation rations, completely changed the culture at the club and will be sorely missed. Lynn Glaister says he brought hope back to our team and reconnected with supporters. Rob Hill, Jockey gave us hope and a style. He connected with us and the players. Sean says, Jockey brought pride, progress, and identity back to Cap. Under him, we saw real growth, especially the way he developed young players. Ben, he turned Cardiff from barely a team to a team that challenged for a playoff spot in the very next season. I haven't always agreed with his selections, but his passion was undeniable. Gareth says, a massive thank you to Jockey. He took over when we were in a right mess, brought belief to everyone at the club, restored passion, and entertained us with attacking rugby. Rob Williams says, Jockey managed to reconnect me to the Cardiff I'd always known, players who knew what it meant to play at Cap for Cardiff, a style of play I recognised, and all this at a time when the squad had been decimated. Dan on Facebook says, great to watch how he developed under Jockey. Would have been great to see what he could have done with a competitive budget and a settled squad. And Mike says that generally thinks that he's done a lot of good with very little in the way of resources. And yeah, just from my point of view, I wrote a piece on the blog this week, but like I don't think I've enjoyed two back-to-back seasons as much as these last two, which is bizarre when we didn't hardly win at all in that first season. But yeah, it was at a time when there was like a couple of people I go down with who had stopped going, and it was like, oh, this is becoming a bit of a slog to get down to the Arms Park every week post COVID as life sort of changed into this new normal. But he definitely made it all of a sudden an exciting place to go and watch rugby. And yeah, last season was it was great pushing for the playoffs. Like go back all the way back to the start of when I wrote them down. So Fordy, just on Jockey, his next step and Wales for a second. Obviously, he joins Danny Wilson now, who's gone in as line out and contact area coach with Steve Tandy and as head coach. Is he the right man to lead Wales's attack? Do we think?
It's an interesting question because you got the sense sometimes from Jockey that he didn't particularly want to be a head coach at times. So he's almost like going back to his natural position as an attack coach when he's at Wales. So from that sense, probably is the right man. Obviously, a biased part of me would want him at Cardiff rather than Wales. And I think although he did perform quite well, particularly the Ireland and Scotland games in the Six Nations, and obviously getting the win eventually against Japan, there's still like kind of questions raised about that England performance, kind of how the attack fared in a game like that. But I think with someone like Danny Wilson there, it was kind of inevitable that you'd kind of get the band back together then. So, like, obviously, wish him all the best with it. And I think no doubt he'll do a good job.
As Fordy says there, Tony, there's a bit of Cardiff bias in this, but Gareth makes the point on Blue Sky as well. He says, surely Jockey provides greater overall value to our national men's game as Cardiff head coach than as Wales attack coach. Is there something in that, do you think, that the improvements that we've seen under him at Cardiff would have fared the national team better to continue that progression as somebody else gone in as attack coach in the national team?
There's certainly something to be said about the freedom that he's given academy lads to come through before or in the last few managers, and probably because of circumstances. Sherratt has picked younger lads, stuck with them. Like I'm not sure we would be rolling into the season with Win It when Halfpenny or Sanjay is available. Maybe 3 years ago, if it was a similar situation and a different manager. He's given those players confidence and he's stuck with them. Um, and having that joined up thinking alongside Griff about how to push players through, I guess, has really benefited us. It'd be really interesting to see what sort of impact he can have when he goes back to, as Fordy said, his roots of just running the attack side and how his attack plan does that impact the sort of players that Wales want to or have to pick, because he favours two playmakers, as we've seen with Sheedy and Thomas at 10 and 12, and then he likes a big winger on the right, as you keep talking about, and a fast and nippy one. So where does that how does that feed into the squad building as well, and will he have any scope around that?
Yeah, that is a really good point. It'd be interesting. I do think he can be flexible still. I think, but there are certain elements like the dual playmaker. I don't think people have I've seen a few comments online about, oh, that means Ben Thomas is at 12 forever and stuff. But I don't think Jockey is necessarily wedded to the second playmaker at 12, because during his first stint, it was obviously 10 and 15 with Anscombe and Jared there when we went to Bilbao. So I think he's somewhat flexible. He's got his basic principles, but I think he's somewhat flexible within that. But yeah, it will be very interesting to see. Also, assuming he's spoken to Tandy at some point, although this is Welsh rugby, so it might have been used to Tandy as well on Monday morning. But assuming they've spoken and what they want to get out of the attack, and I think Tandy's been painted a little bit as this very defensive coach, which obviously he is a defense guy, but he's also just come from Scotland, who are pretty maverick attacking team with a guy like Finn Russell at 10. So yeah, interesting one to see how that develops. Back to Cardiff then. Fordy Hugh at the end of his comment tagged on that he's angry at the way it's been handled by the WRU. There was a sense of inevitability about this, as you said, post the stints last season and Danny coming in. But like, could they have picked a more sabotaging-esque time to do this, like the week the season starts?
I think yeah, the worst would have been if they'd somehow done it Friday evening or Saturday morning, and I think that would have been the worst. But no, it's awful timing. Like I referenced, yeah, with Danny, I think it was almost. It seemed the impression you got was once he was on board, Jockey was then fully committed, and I think there's a lot of questions because we heard all sorts of rumours, like you said, about Matt being involved with Wales going forward. So to have it a week, well, less than a week before the opening game of the season is, yeah, it's a real kick in the teeth. But it doesn't really surprise me with the WRU. I think they've got a bit of a track record with kind of sabotaging the clubs in Wales.
I use the phrase "kick in the crotch," but teeth is probably the better version.
Just before, so we're recording this Tuesday evening, just before coming on, there's been the club's media stuff ahead of this weekend, and Cornel Van Zyl has been put up for it. So I think just to give context on what we know and what's been reported, at the moment, the club have said that Cornel Van Zyl, Gethin Jenkins, Johnny Goodridge, and Scott Andrews are going to step up in the interim period in the same way that they did sort of that Leinster game last season when Jockey was away with Wales in the Six Nations. Wales Online, sorry, have added to that by reporting that Cornel Van Zyl is going to be the sort of head coach of those four and is sort of nominally in charge. And then just before we started recording from today's media session with Van Zyl, Simon Thomas has reported that Van Zyl has said in that press conference that he is keen to take on the job full time if that was possible. And in the video that the club have posted, where they haven't included that quote, but they have included Van Zyl talking through that essentially Johnny Goodridge will step up as full-time attack coach now. He's been doing the launch plays, but he'll take on general attacking shape. Then you'll have Gethin Jenkins looking after some of the kicking strategy, and Scott Andrews doing some of the forwards attacking shape, so that Van Zyl is still doing line out and like contact area stuff, but obviously has head coach responsibilities around that as well. Tony, that sort of gives us an impression of what's going to happen the next few weeks, but what should slash do you think will happen sort of short term and then going into more medium term with the coaching situation now?
Well, I guess it all weighs on the consultation. I know we've tried to steer clear of referencing that word, but I can't see any sort of decision being made until that has been finished, and even does a search even start until that is announced? Because if you're trying to hire a head coach, are you going to get people to interview if they don't know that there's going to be a job here in 6 or 8 months? It's a really difficult position. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the season out with Van Zyl as head coach and try and just solidify and have a bit of continuity from that perspective. Bringing someone in October, November, who would want to get the lads playing in a different way, more to their style, it would just disrupt where we are. So I'm never a big fan of interims, but where there's consistency, especially at this sort of period of Welsh rugby, where there's very little consistency from 1 month to the next, it's probably not a bad idea to keep him around for the season, because he's done wonders with the forwards from the last year. They looked a completely different animal from a Moore perspective, especially. So, and he looks like a frightening man as well, which is what you want from a head coach. So.
Fordy, I think what Tony says is pretty fair there. There still have been some names attached to the job already, despite the fact that Sherratt only left yesterday. We've heard Stephen Jones's name banded around, Wayne Pivac, another one as well. Is there anyone you think like you would rather come in if we were going to get somebody new, or is it just such a preposterous thought that it's not even worth considering any other names?
It was interesting hearing the names because I think particularly both Pivac and Stephen Jones are kind of very attack orientated, which would suit specifically the current Cardiff team, but also just a Cardiff team in general, especially if you had someone like Pivac or Stephen Jones just pulling off the stuff they did in that kind of Scarlets Pro 12 winning team. I wouldn't complain about that, but I do agree with Tony of I think it is a with everything that's going on in Welsh rugby, it's a step. I don't know how the process would work in terms of getting someone in, but I think if you look back as well with how Matt Sherratt came into the job, it was more there wasn't enough time to find someone else, and yet here we are, 5 days before the season starts. That logically, if we go based on that, then I think you have to give Van Zyl till the end of the season to see what he can do. And if he's hungry for the job, then I think it's a great kind of chance for him to take it with two hands and see what he can do.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I think not even doesn't necessarily have to be to the end of the season. I mean, just let him have the first
Mm.
block of fixtures at least, because at least
Yeah.
hopefully by the end of the first block of fixtures, we'll then have the consultation finished and the announcement of what the WRU at least are intending to do, and we might know what's happening beyond like November then, because I can't
Mm.
see at the moment how there's two things I can't see at the moment is one like why any like Tony said why anyone would come in and take this job even like short term or whatever like there's it's just not a particularly attractive job to come in from the outside attempt to overhaul any sort of game plans and stuff 3 weeks into the season and then if they get the news then that the club's going to cease to exist they get told that in October like what are you going to say to the players through December then like oh don't worry lads chin up we'll still try and win a few games anyway like best of luck with that and the second thing I think is that like there is not really a management structure at the club at the moment either like we've got Jamie doing interim managing director, I think his official title is Jamie Muir. You've got, as we'll mention in the news now, new chairman coming in. Other than that, like, who is making these decisions? Because the WRU clearly aren't helping us out. so, yeah, I'm not sure what. I think the only realistic scenario for Cardiff is just carry on with the coaches they've got. Don't worry about even expending any energy on looking at what's out there. Like, just focus on getting stuff right off the field as much as possible, and just pray for the outcome in October.
One of the many WhatsApp groups that I'm in that talks about rugby mentioned Rob Howley, um, and he hadn't even popped into my head, and then immediately saw his name, and I went, that'd be such a WRU like selection to try and push him on us as well because they're
Doesn't he?
desperate. Yeah, they were desperate to get him back into the game, weren't they?
I think he's taken a job though, isn't he? I
Oh,
read
is
the other
he?
day. He's actually like taken a
Yeah.
job out of rugby now. I don't know how like permanent that is, whether he'd fancy it if somebody said, "Oh, Cardiff's available, do you want it?" But yeah, that in the like sales or something like that, account manager, something
Mm.
along those lines. I can't remember exactly what it was. The only other thing I wanted to add is that I think there'll be a natural, a little bit jokey, but also quite serious clamour for Dan Fish to sort of step up with the first team and do a bit more attack stuff now. No, I've no qualms with if that was to happen in terms of like Fishy's clearly a talented young coach and he'll get them playing the right way. You saw some of the shapes that the Rags put out on Thursday night, and there's a lot of similarities to what Matt Sherratt's trying to do with the first team there. The only thing I would say is that like let's not shoot ourselves in the foot and hamper the development of these young players by messing around with them as well by taking their academy coach out and taking the Rags coach out and putting him in the first team. You just end up sort of hampering everybody then rather than like actually filling any gaps there and making more gaps down the pathway as you go. So that would be my only comment on Fishy,
He's
but
he's only a year into his head coach career as well,
yeah.
and it's a natural jump to because he's a Cardiff lad and he's a Cardiff legend. But again, we talked about well, not on here, but we talked before the pod about Gethin doing media and how angry he would be on a day-to-day basis. The problem with Dan Fish being head coach is you'd have to subtitle all of the media events because nobody would be able to understand him.
Proper Cardiff. Yeah, I think if he has the season with the Ragso and then as somebody comes in next
Yeah.
summer and then they want to make him the attack coach, that's fine. I think you can properly do that then. But for now, he's probably best left where he is. Right, my only other question in this section, Tony, was just sort of generally looking a little bit forward, not this weekend necessarily, but to this first block and the first part of the season as a whole, is how confident are we that the players have been left in a place to be competitive this season? I know that Jockey's gone.
I guess we've talked about it quite a bit about this was a really badly kept secret. So well, I think Cuthbert announced it on his podcast about 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Um, so hopefully that means that the club have been putting plans in place and people like Johnny Goodridge and that have been taking more of a lead on the on the attack during pre-season. So we've got that continuity, like it, to make sure that the guys have got as much of a chance of hitting the ground running as possible. Also, they've got a point to prove. If we come out of this consultation and there's two clubs, which it could be three clubs, could be four. There's going to be a clamour for jobs. There's a lot of putting yourself in a shop window this season. So I'm really hoping that a lot of the people like Big Al and Harry Millard and people like that who were looking at getting out of rugby a couple of years ago realize that if they have a big year this year, they can continue to set themselves up and push through.
Absolutely. And just to bring this section to an end, I think for us as supporters, it's like more important than ever that we get down and support the team this Saturday through this first block of games. Like there's, I think the players will really appreciate the support there and that extra bit of helping hand. I think it, like Jockey will be there on Saturday, you said, and so it'd be nice to say farewell to him as well. And just throughout this first block of games until the end of that consultation, to send a bit of a message to the WRU that like we're here to support Cardiff. We're Cardiff fans. We want the club to continue, and that if we turn out in our numbers and hopefully drive the team onto a few good results, that shows that despite everything going on off the field, we can still compete. And so hopefully that is reflected in the players' performance as well. On to news then. Doesn't get any better, I'm afraid, than the rest of the news. It's not looking too good. Injury updates. We start with Mason Grady has undergone surgery on his AC joint after hurting it against Richmond in pre-season. He's looking at, well, I think they optimistically said that they were hoping he'd be back sort of before Christmas, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't, maybe not see him at all before the Six Nations, but certainly not until into the new year. 4D, like, what are we doing at 13? It is just Millard now. Elijah Evans also out until after the autumn with a fractured thumb. Um, Ewan Stevens and Theo Cabango still on long-term injury, so we haven't got many wingers either. Are we just gonna sort of like do a raffle if Harry Millard goes down and somebody from the stands is at 13? Or
It really seems like it. I'm not going to put my hand up to take that role anytime soon. But yeah, it's a massive worry, kind of relying on Millard to kind of be the 13 at least until December, best case scenario. And I think you've got to consider as well that with Grady, the amount that he's been playing at wing, I still think it was quite big to expect just him and Millard to be the 13 options going forward. Um, but yeah, I don't know how it works with kind of insurance, but I think we are crying out for some sort of short-term 13 cover somewhere because if Millard goes down, and again, Millard's not your most natural 13. I think he's a lot better on the wing. I think if Millard goes down, then we're really in massive trouble there.
yeah, no, I did list a few on Twitter last week of options like short-term loan guys. Obviously, Louis Hennessy's at Bath still. He's played in the Prem Cup, but I think with Ollie Lawrence back now, he might not have too much game time there, so they might be keen for him to go. Oshan Roberts at Sale was very good for Wales under 20s last season. Doesn't seem to be getting too much senior game time there. And then at the other Welsh teams, well, the Scarlet's got quite a few at the moment. In Max Page, Johnny Williams can play there as well. Joe Roberts, obviously. So I don't know how keen they'd be to let a senior guy go out. But I've always quite liked Tom Florence at the Ospreys as well, who hasn't, he's 22, 23 now, hasn't played a huge amount of first team rugby, still in and out of the Bridgend team in the SRC. So I think there could be some mutual benefit to allowing him to come on loan to us as well for him, the Ospreys, and for Cardiff. Otherwise, well, Ray Lilo still kept his boots anyway, so he's likely to have stepped up and is going to do some more skills coaching stuff now. Goodridge is doing the attack, but it's the us not getting anybody in seems to suggest he actually could be a viable option for cover, sort of Dan Fish-esque, where we just never let him retire, despite his various attempts to. Other injuries then, James Botham's out till after the autumn. He's had a knee issue, which I think he's had surgery on over the summer. I mentioned Elijah Evans' thumb. That's also after the autumn. Matty Young picked up an ankle injury in pre-season. He's going to miss the first few weeks of the season. And then Ewan Stevens and Theo Cabango, it just says that they continue their rehab, which feels a bit worryingly open-ended, particularly for Theo, who's not played a lot of rugby in the last couple of years. But hopefully, we see them back sooner rather than later. Other piece of news then, thanks to Worcester social media team for including Lee Halfpenny in the background of their photo when they came to train with Cardiff. We have found out that he's doing a bit of part-time kicking coaching at the club. Like all the reports seem to suggest that he's still very keen to play this season. Who that is with remains to be seen. So it doesn't seem like it's necessarily a long-term kicking coach job at Cardiff, but he's certainly in and around the Arms Park for now. And then, as I mentioned a bit earlier, we have a new chairman, independent chairman. They keep referring to as like you have to keep saying independent, so then he really will be independent in everything he does. His name is Scott Waddington. He's a former CEO of SA Brain before they went bust, before COVID. I think they're quite keen to add that it was when SA Brain were doing really well, he was the CEO, and it all went wrong after he left. But he's also the chairman, the former chairman of Transport for Wales. So jokes can include what time's he turning up? Will he actually turn up and send somebody else on his behalf? And he'll promise a new chairman coming, but they'll never actually arrive. They'll always be on a different line to the one that you're currently on. So,
Also, kickoffs will habitually be 5 minutes late now.
yeah, kickoffs constantly late as well. We'll add some more as the season goes on to that. Send them in if you've got any more. Rags Corner. Uh, the Rags have started the SRC season. They've played 2 games since we last podcasted with Derry Cross, previewing their campaign. They got a 6 point bonus point win up at RGC in the first round, and then a short turnaround for the second round on Thursday night on S4C against Carmarthen at the Arms Park, going down 33-36. 2 tries for Derry Cross, who obviously scored a lot before he came on the pod, but every try he scores from now on, we will claim as like podcast inspired tries. So that's on the back of us. The Quins were 18-7 up at half time. Cardiff hit back through the second half. Gavin Parry and Tom Cottle going over. More tries. Roger Morgan going over for his first try for the club from close range as well. They were 33-26 up going into the last few minutes, but then Quinn scored from a maul before a bit of messing around and a kick that was short from the Quins. Cardiff tried to run it out, get turned over, and Ellis Price kicks the winning kick for a 33-36 loss. Tony, you were there. Your general thoughts on that Thursday evening game?
We looked underpowered up front. And it's not often that I've been able to say that over the last couple of years with the Rags. Like we looked short of the Hud brothers and a couple of others. I'm not convinced by like we got a proper tooling in the scrum in the first half as well. I'm not convinced by Will Davis King even at that SRC level. There were bright patches, but yeah, a lot of what we've done good over the last or done well over the last few years it has come off being a good pack, getting fast ball and using our explosive backs. And we just didn't have that ability. Talking to Hugh from the Cardiff Rugby Supporters Club, he said it was a very similar performance against RGC. The only difference was we managed to get the win there, but it was a very similar performance. So it was sounds like it was quite scrappy up at RGC as well. Yeah, so it's a worrying start to the season, but I guess we often start slow. Is my general recollection.
Yeah, I think that's certainly fair. It does tend to be October, November before we sort of patch a couple of results together. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree that the Hud brothers, Sean Moore, Alan Rees, they're huge losses from the spine of that pack. Aled Ward as well played really well last season. So not,
Mackenzie Martin as well.
yeah.
Like he played a bit last year. Like having that international quality player just in and around the squad is just like losing that is just a big thing.
And then a couple of new combinations with like Ian Davis and Lloyd Lucas at 9 and 10. Reese Cummins is new at fullback, who had some good moments, had some tough moments as well. But yeah, hopefully those guys, the younger guys, there's plenty to learn from there. Particularly, I think, for the likes of Lucas and Cummins at 10 and 15, and how to manage that last couple of minutes of a game when you're just in the lead and holding on to that. But Yeah, no, not panic stations just yet, but a couple of tough games coming out with back to back against Ebu Vale now for the Rags,
Yeah.
which I'm not really sure how that works on a fixture when you can play everybody twice and you just play the same team once twice in a week. But yeah, going up there on Saturday will be a tough ask because that's not a place you want to be going when your pack is a little bit underpowered. Moving on then to more on-field stuff for the first team. We'll touch on pre-season. Obviously, myself and Tony discussed the Richmond game a little bit in that Rags podcast, but Cardiff beat Richmond 71-10, and then in the second pre-season game went away to Leinster in Dublin and won 31-10 at the Tallaght Stadium against, not the strongest Leinster, it's fair to say, but I mean, I've seen Cardiff lose to not the strongest Leinster many, many a time over the last couple of years. So, good to get the result there. 40. So, what were your general preseason takeaways, performance-wise, or individual players?
I did kind of wonder what before the Richmond game, what value the Richmond game would have, and I think scoring a try after what was it 30 seconds kind of almost confirmed it there and then. But there was like some very positive play. I thought really frustratingly, both Elijah Evans and Mason Grady looked very good before they both went off. And then the Leinster game, I thought what really frustrated me was it was a comfortable win, but I think we left so many tries out there. And I really think we can't get away with doing that when it comes to the start of the URC and some of the teams that will be playing that, like you said, it was quite a young, inexperienced Leinster side. I think we'll really have to kind of polish those sort of chances off if we get them, especially against a team like the Lions with a pack that they have. I think we need to take every chance we get, but positive signs, especially a decent win against Leinster.
Tony, I know we've spoken briefly about the Richmond game on the pod, but yeah, your thoughts generally from pre-season and that Leinster game?
Um, I think we talked about it a little. Like the stuff we did off the ball against Richmond was probably the most important part, um, as in structure and shapes and stuff like that. Um, I didn't watch the Leinster game. I can't remember where I was. I think I was at the Bridgend game, watching them play Carmarthen Quins the other week. Um, so yeah, it's I take preseason with a pinch of salt every year because you can win preseason and then go on a run of three losses. It's more about structure and getting those sort of things right and then learning from what's happened over those two games. So it's quite interesting that we did two games and then had 2 weeks off to build off that stuff. I don't remember us doing that sort of thing before. I'm not sure whether that is something we've done over the last couple of years under Jockey. Um, but it's so important now that we take the learnings from that Leinster game. Like Fordy said, we've got to hit the ground running. We've got to score tries, and we've got to put ourselves in positions where we're not under pressure late in games.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add is that young player wise, like preseason always is one of those ones where you see like a sort of 18, 19-year-old player and you're like, oh, he's qualities, and then you don't see him again for like 2 years or whatever. But this preseason, I thought the young players like genuinely showed they were ready to play first team rugby. Guys like I think Reece Barrett was great when he played in both games. Steph Manuel getting the nod to start away at Leinster. Like he's still raw, don't get me wrong. He runs down a blind alley every now and again, but yeah, some of his touches are like, yeah, this guy I'd have him as my backup to Ben Thomas this year and like have Roy Jennings as a break glass in case of emergency guy. I think he's generally ready to do that. And then we'll get on to team selection for Lions later, but I suspect there'll be a strong conversation to be had around Tom Bowen starting that game because yeah, he's just electric, like X Factor guy, but is I think is has a level of maturity to put himself in the right places to get involved in that. One of the tries that we sort of technically left out there, but also didn't leave out there was one that he scored just before half time, which was a definite try. But I'll I know there were some people in our Cardiff Central WhatsApp group who were less than impressed by the refereeing, and I'll cut them the benefit of the doubt that it's pre-season for them as well. But they've given it as a knock-on in goal, which is just an absolutely bizarre decision considering that the ball finishes rolling backwards. So I don't know how you would have knocked it on and then the ball rolled backwards, but it's a great finish, and he pops up on the right wing to finish off that move when he was playing on the left wing. So yeah, I think great stuff from him, and yeah, we'll have the discussion about who starts on the wings in a bit. At this point of the pod, then, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, please do feel free to like and subscribe if you're listening on some sort of podcast platform. If you're on YouTube, do feel free to like the video and subscribe to the Rap channel. I think it's just crossed the 2,000 subscriber mark, so we can kick on towards the road to 3,000 now. I think producer Lee's probably going to start pushing that soon. Um, but yeah, do feel free to leave us a comment as well. Obviously, only nice comments allowed. If it's a mean comment, we will just call you out on the pod and harass you relentlessly until you delete it. But we'll move on then in the final part of this podcast to this Saturday's game. Cardiff face the Lions in the first round of the United Rugby Championship. Saturday night, 7:45 p.m. kickoff at the Arms Park. The first weather forecast of the season, which will definitely be wrong. It currently says it's drizzly but dry by kickoff, so expect somewhere between storm and really nice sunny evening. The Lions come to us off the back of finishing 11th last season. We beat them at the Arms Park back in late March, early April time, just after the Six Nations. As we were discussing just off the pod beforehand, they do play in the Currie Cup, and they did lose that in dramatic fashion last week via a last kick of the game. Fordy, you had a quick look at them, and what were your thoughts on sort of, is that good? Do they continue playing for like 12 months and just never stop, or is it a bad thing?
Yeah, I'm really conflicted of whether, yeah, they've got this kind of momentum building that they've been playing consistently, whereas our players haven't. So does that mean they'll just hit the ground running when they come out to the Arms Park on Saturday, or are they going to be deflated that they just lost the Currie Cup final? I'm hoping it's the latter because that'll be a nice game to be involved in on Saturday. But yeah, it seemed that they had quite a few of their starting players, particularly the ones that started at the Arms Park. I think it was either last March or April we played them. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how how they get on. But yeah, hopefully they're all knackered.
Yeah, that's what we're fingers crossed for. They've named a touring squad to come up to the Northern Hemisphere. They play us and then have an Italian doubleheader where they play Zebra on the 5th of October and Benetton on the 11th. 30 odd players in it, including two new signings. Angelo Davids has come in from the Stormers, and Edouard Keita has come in, I think, from the Grickers. Not sure about that though. Also, Dylan Schoblom up front is a new face. They have lost Marius Lowe, their captain, has gone to Sales Sharks, and Edwil van der Merwe, I think he's a newly Springbok winger, has gone to the other Sharks, the actual Sharks, not the Sales Sharks. Just going to anybody called Sharks, basically. Other than that, it's a pretty settled team. Ruan Venter's been around the block a bit in the back row. Frankie Horn in the pack as well. Richard Creel. I think if your surname is Creel, you're automatically quite good at rugby in South Africa, as David and Jesse seem to prove. They've got four players on the standby list, including Chris Smith, the former Bulls fly half, who's come in from the French league, which is a bit of a surprise that he's not there. So I think that's probably a boost for us to not face him on the weekend. But as I was saying off the pod beforehand, I don't really know anything about the Lions. They just don't really exist to me as a team. Sort of everyone, the Bulls and the Sharks are like the main South African team. That's where a lot of the Springboks come from. They're the ones who play quite well every season. Well, the Sharks actually don't really. They massively underperform considering the Springboks that they've got. And then the Stormers are the ones who, perhaps not having as many Springboks, but are usually there or thereabouts in the latter stages of competitions. And then the Lions, I don't know, they just turn up every now and again and we play them, and we tend to do all right against them, but they're a little bit, as you would expect, like they're sort of like South Africa light, and that they've got quite good pack, but it's obviously not as good as the other South African teams' packs, and they've got quite quick backs, but they're not quite as quick as the other South Africa teams' backs. Tony, from a Cardiff point of view, looking at this game, is it, I don't know, is it an exaggeration to call this suddenly now like one of the most important games that we've had in a good few years on the back of everything that's happening and the need to kick off the season well with a win?
No, if we lose, it's panic stations, and we immediately regret all decisions we've made from now until the end of the season. Um, it's a really important game. Like the elephant in the room is you don't want to be a team that starts the season badly because you don't want to give them lot any credence on who to get rid of. Um, we also need to show that we've got the resilience to lose people like Jockey and still carry on going, and still play good rugby. Like just because the head coach has gone doesn't mean that these lads have forgotten everything that they've done over the last 2 years, and the improvement that we've had in the last 2 years and under Jockey has been phenomenal. But winning, and winning is so key now. Like we've got to kick on. Eighth has to be the minimum this year, I think. I'm going bold.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And with that in mind, then, 4D, if we're, continuing to, despite everything that's going on, if you sort of take Cardiff as the team where we are, like building forwards and the squad progressing, if we're looking for that playoff spot, this game, looking at our fixtures, we go to Munster then week 2. It is early in the season, but it's still quite a crucial one in terms of, winning your home games and making that playoff top 8 for the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was last season, the first block. I think there was 6 games. We won 3 of them, picked up a few bonus points in a couple of the losses, and that kind of set us up to be in a position where going forward we were kind of in that playoff contention. So particularly with more home games geared towards the start of the season, I think it's home games in particular, like the must wins, and especially with the atmosphere we get down the Arms Park. And yeah, it's easy to kind of say that it's the first game of the season, but with Munster straight after, we're such a momentum team that like as soon as we get a run of wins, we're just kind of we put in better performances. That I think it would be the kind of perfect way to start the season is to get that win and get that momentum rolling then. And I've no doubt that if we get the win on Saturday, I'm not expecting us to beat Munster, but I think it'd be a lot better performance against Munster than if we're to lose Saturday.
Yeah, no, I think there's looking at the fixture. So Cardiff's first 5 up until the autumn internationals, it's Lions home, Munster away, Connacht home, Dragons away, and Edinburgh home. And I think there was sort of like there's only extremes that could come out of that for Cardiff. In that if we lose to the Lions, you could see us losing to Munster, and then you could see us losing to Connacht at home, and then possibly going to Dragons, who their defense coach said they're making the playoffs this season, so we have to assume that that will definitely happen. And but if we are 0 from 3 after that game, go into Rodney Parade there. If they've had a couple of improved showings, which they do have a bit more of a settled coaching staff now, and they have made some decent signings, and they've obviously got a lot of ex-Cardiff players who'll be wanting to prove a point in that game. Realistically, we could end up at Edinburgh losing at home in that last one and be 0-5 if things go if it goes off the sail early. Flip side there though is if we do beat Lions and we go to Munster, even just like play really well and nab a losing bonus point from that, we can come back and beat Connacht, beat Dragons, and beat Edinburgh at home and be 4 wins and a losing bonus point from 5, which will be a really great scenario. I just can't see anything in between that at all for Cardiff at the moment. Tony, this game on the weekend, what do we want to see from Cardiff that was different from last season in terms of how we go about winning these?
Bit more composure in the final third of the pitch and the final third of the game. We regularly turned down points last year to go for the try and get tries, and I'd like to see that sort of thing continue. Even with hopefully Owen Lloyd at 10, who's got a much better kicking percentage over the last couple of years, I think, than Sheedy has done. I think. I just I want to see us hit the ground running, and like you guys have said, just build off that momentum, and go from there. It, it's a really simple thing, and it makes me feel silly to say it, but it all hinges on Saturday, whole season.
You say you think Lloyd's got a better kicking percentage than Sheedy. I reckon everybody's got a better kicking percentage than Sheedy after
I,
last season.
I've told you my conspiracy theory. I don't think the squad like him are deliberately scoring the corner because they were trying to score into the posts for Lloyd. The mean moment Sheedy came on, we were scoring tries in the corner.
Um, we'll move on to team selection then. So I mentioned the injury list a bit earlier. There's a couple of players who weren't included on that who were sort of question marked on my squad list at the moment. Anyway, so we haven't seen anything of Corey Domachowski in pre-season. I haven't seen him in any of the training pictures or footage either, so we're not really sure what's going on with him. Ed Byrne also not involved. Haven't seen him in any training stuff, but he did go out with the team to Dublin. Unsure if that's just because it's where he's from, and so they sort of said we've got a spare seat on the plane if you want to come along or something. But or whether that's a point to whether that suggests that he is like quite close to returning and he will be involved. And then Faletau is the other one as well. I don't think we would necessarily expect to see him in preseason, just on the basis that he seems to always be quite good when he comes back without having played anyway, and he is liable to get injured at a slight change of wind direction. But
He he was in
similarly,
one of the photos, I think,
he was, but
chatting to Tips.
he was in a lot of the training stuff. He's been in the photos, but like on the side, like
Big
not
coat.
fully involved. Yeah, and like there was one they put some pictures up or a video I think after they announced that Jockey was leaving to sort of show that everything's carrying on as normal on Monday, and he was stood in shorts and like a training top in running shoes, not in boots. I'm not sure if that's just because they were doing testing or whether that's it also could be the case that he's sort of got the Nick Williams role of he does whatever training he sort of wants to do and then just turns up on the weekend and plays. So yeah, so we're not too sure about him. Stefan Manuel's in the concussion protocol after the Leinster game, so it depends whether he's past that. The one thing we do know is that Danny Southworth is available for this weekend. He served his 2 game ban during the preseason friendlies and has graduated from tackle school with honours. So he is free to play. We also think that George Knott is okay after he went off against Richmond. He is available this weekend, and that Ben Thomas has been taking a full part in training as well. He just similarly wasn't risked in pre-season. So, Fordy, coming to you first, front row wise, I think there's a couple of head-to-heads there. Loose head wise, if we're assuming Doma isn't available this weekend, as seems possibly likely, and Ed Byrne is still sidelined, it's down to Reece Barrett and Danny Southworth. Which way would you start and bench them?
I think purely because one's played in the preseason games, the other hasn't. I'd start with Reece Barrett. Kind of, he got a nasty injury. I think it was against Leinster last season, and he was playing some really good rugby before that. Only like his first few games for Cardiff. So I think it's almost like give him another chance to, having played in the preseason games, give him that number one jersey, and then I'd bench Danny Southworth, who he's big bloke. I think if you get him on for the final half an hour, it's kind of probably the right way round there.
Tony at hooker. I think a question we might ask quite a lot this season: Belcher or Lloyd, which way round they go. What do we think for the first game of the season?
Captain starts.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know what else to say there, really.
Yeah,
Like
that's fair. I
he's
just
also got a lovely moustache at the moment, so
is there a point where, despite him being captain, the need for Lloyd to sort of go from the start in big games does overtake that at any point?
yeah, I think so. Which is why it's key that we make sure that McNally keeps playing and Teddy keeps playing because they add that leadership as well as people like Falatau and Botham and the few others that we've got throughout the squad littered through there, like Adams and others. Like there's a real strong leadership core. So relying on all of that means that we shouldn't need that. It's just first game of the season. You want the man you've given the club captaincy to run out, I think.
Fair. 4D, I've penciled Azza in as a starting tight head, unless you've got any strong objections to that, with the question mark then of Javan Sebastian or Sam Wainwright as the one making their debut off the bench.
Yeah, I fully agree with Azarati starting. I think I'd probably go Javan Sebastian on the bench just purely on the basis of I don't know if this is a fact, but I assume he's played more rugby over the last few years than Wainwright has. But I'll just go on that basis, and um, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So be it.
No, I had Sebastian in on my bench as well. He just looked a bit better in pre-season generally, I thought as well. I think I do like, although we sort of brought them in together as like the kind of literary replacement. I do think that the starting depth chart has Sebastian above Wainwright as a clear second choice, and Wainwright then as a sort of improvement on like Will Davis King as your third choice then. So that's where I had them. Second row, once again for this season, impermanent marker, McNally and Teddy are already in. Won't be taking any questions on that. Back row then, Tony, starting on the blind side, looks to me to be a pretty straight shootout between Mann and Donald probably at the moment.
Um, I would stick with Alex Mann mainly because Donald gives you the second row and six cover off the bench, and I really, I just really liked what we saw from him at the tail end of the season, and also in the two preseason games. He linked up really well in that Richmond game with Basham. From what I've spoken to other people about, they did exactly the same thing alongside Alan Lawrence as well. So yeah, he looked like he was enjoying his rugby again at the end of the last season and in that Richmond game from what I saw. So.
Um, Mention of Basham then 40. 7 and 8 might be slightly linked because of Basham and which way he goes. I guess there's a team that has Faletau at 8 if he's fit, and then it's just whether it's Basham or Dan Thomas at 7. And then also what you think if Faletau isn't fit, who goes to 8 and then who starts at 7?
I've got penciled in Alan Lawrence at 8 because obviously if Faletau's available, I think you do slot him straight in at 8. Um, and I think in either scenario, I have Basham at 7 because I think he's from like the interview quotes I've seen, he seems like he's got a big point to prove coming to Cardiff. And I do think, as much as he's comfortable across the back row, I do kind of see him more as a 7, in my opinion. But again, with like if Faletau's not available, I'm very comfortable with Big Al at 8 to just kind of try and keep that momentum going on from last season because I think he put in some unbelievable shifts and he did look quite solid when he came on against Leinster. Oh, sorry, he started against Leinster, didn't he?
Yeah.
He did look solid with his carrying. So if he can just keep that momentum going, I'd be happy with that. And it's just he just carries all day. And I think against a team like the Lions, it's kind of you need those carriers just going back and forth. And unfortunately, Faletau would be my preference, but like if he's not available, then Big Al is a great second choice.
I wonder whether there's a conversation about keeping Faletau's powder dry for out in Munster. Um, he he loves playing against Munster. There was that superb try that we scored last year. I think was against Munster, running down the wing. Um, Gives him an extra week, and also just gives us a bit more experience out there in that sort of situation. So obviously, it completely backfire. But
Very, very fair point. Into the backs end tone. Scrum half. Obviously, there's. I think if we assume that Ian Davis is probably staying with the Rags for now, there's three senior guys there: Johan Mulder, Aled Davis, and Ellis Bevan. Who gets the nod for this first one for you?
Mulver Hill rule. So Johan Mulder.
Would he start anyway for you if it wasn't
Yeah,
even there?
yeah.
Like,
I from the from about halfway through last year, I thought he was our number one. Um, Ellis Bevans looked really good. He looked really good against Richmond. He had a couple of sniping runs, which was similar to what he used to do at the Rags when he broke through initially. But so hopefully he's getting back to that sort of game style and get the Gatland style out of him. But Mulder was brilliant at times last year, and obviously against the Lions we had that massive viral clip that the club can continue to to roll out in the build-up once the team's announced against that. The lad who is currently awaiting the result of his drug or failed drug test and whether he'll be suspended for it. The prop lad, I can't
Nicely put on a legal standpoint there as well. Like we're just reporting the news. We're not casting any aspersions. The news is the massive prop has failed a drug test, but he can still play until December when his hearing is, and that's all we're saying. We're not saying anything else about it. So we got Mulder at 9. 40. Tony mentioned earlier he thinks hopes that Lloyd starts at 10. In a sort of direct head-to-head, Lloyd v Sheedy. Who are you going with?
I feel like that Leinster game, the team, particularly the back line, it almost felt like that could well be the kind of first choice back line to an extent. So like on that basis, and given like how much they played together towards like tail end of the last season, I'd be more inclined to go Sheedy. And it's particularly from the point of view of like trying to work out my bench is we've not got a huge amount of depth at centre. We've not got a huge amount of depth at wing. Johan Lloyd has played centre and wing. I don't know if he particularly wants to play either right now because he's kind of got his sights very much on being a 10. But it does give that option of if he's on the bench, kind of chucking him on if there's any injuries.
No, I absolutely agree. I had Sheedy in my team as well. Because I actually played quite well against Leinster as well, like some of the kick passing and the attacking shape and stuff. But it does come with a massive caveat of, and I've written in capitals next to Ben Thomas, goal kicker at 12. Like it has, like Sheedy didn't kick great again in pre-season, I didn't think, and maybe Lee Halfpenny has like done an intensive course where like Sheedy wakes up in the middle of the night, like Lee Halfpenny's just staring at him in bed, like do kicking practice now, and he's going out at like 3 a.m. to do it. But yeah, I think you have to give the tee to Thomas to start this season and go from there because it just takes the pressure off Sheedy as well. Like if the real concern is that if he does start on Saturday and then the first kick goes wrong, and you just know that there's not going to be able to contain the groans on the terrace when that kick goes awry. It could not. It hasn't so far, but at some point it's got to sort of get stuck into his confidence a little bit. So, yeah, go Sheedy for now. And then the rest of the back line, I don't know if there's much conversation to be had really, just because of those lack of numbers. I've got Thomas and Millard at 12 or 13. I've got Josh Adams and Tom Bowen on the wing, and then Cam Winnett at full back. I don't know if anyone's got any strong feelings on anyone else who I may have forgotten there. No, blank faces staring back at
No.
me. I may, the Beetham did come off the bench against Leinster, so you could say he could start at full back, but I'd struggle to see a scenario where it's not Winnett, to be honest, at this point. Like, they're going to be quite careful about Beetham, I would have thought, getting him back in after a couple of back-to-back injuries, and also just because Cam was great at the back end of last season as well and probably deserves to be the starter at the moment. So, yeah, that's the back line. Bench then. So, what have we got so far? We've got Danny Southworth, Evan Lloyd, and Javan Sebastian. If we're assuming that the Faletau is either not fit or left for Munster, well, I suppose the first question, Tony, is 6-2 question mark?
Yeah.
So
If you've got Sheedy at 10, you have Johan Lloyd done as the extra one.
so
Go on.
forwards wise though, then you've got 19, 20, 21. You've guys like George Knott, Rory Thornton, Ben Donnell, Dan Thomas. Who are you slotting into those positions?
I want Knott, Thomas, and Donnell. I think Knott gives me second row cover, so does Donnell. Thomas gives me 7. Donnell also gives me 6 cover. I think Knott does a little as well in a pinch. And then Basham gives you 8 cover. So you've covered all of the back row and the second row in those. And you've got Alice Bevan. We can come on to that, but Alice Bevan covers 9 and wing. And like Fordy said, yeah.
I suppose my My only question challenge to that might be is he might not do Thomas and he might do Thornton, Knott, and Donnell with Alex Mann as your seven cover then, I'm plucking this off the top of my head as I speak, but I think Mann might have started at open side against Lions last season. That might have
Yeah,
been
he did.
yeah. So just like against a South African team, like it's full on bomb squad. Like Thornton comes on, shores up the line out, Knott comes on with a bit of weight, and then Donnell is a big heavy guy as well. Fordy, I don't know if you've got strong thoughts on that.
Um, I've not got like massively strong thoughts of. I can see a value. It's worth mentioning. I thought when Thornton came on against Leinster, he looks like he's bulked up a bit,
Hmm.
which
Is that not just because
would
he's cut there?
could have been. But that's if he has bulked up. I might be making it up, but could be an awful camera at the Leinster Stadium, which was just I'm not even going to bother pronouncing it, but it's. I think there's definitely value in kind of that sort of just three blokes who are tall, big, and will just probably tackle anything. Um, but again, I wouldn't be too like disheartened if like Dan Thomas slotted in somewhere there to like towards say the last 15 minutes if it's tight. Just kind of he's a bit of an animal everywhere, a bit of and he's not your usual seven breakdown threat, but he does a job there. And yeah, it's really tough kind of trying to pick the perfect bench.
Tony mentioned Bevan there as the replacement nine. I also had that down, which I wonder if that might surprise a few people with Ali Davis not there. My thinking there, I don't know if you seem to agree. He played on the wing in both preseason games.
Mm.
I think more out of necessity against Richmond because a couple of people went off, but it seemed to be like a pre-planned thing away at Leinster. Do we think that is a point to a 6-2 bench and that Bevan then genuinely covers scrum, half, and wing?
Uh, I think he does. If you think back to Wales against Japan in the second test, the jockey also brought on his nine quite late. Was that Morgan Williams
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
yeah? He brought him on at the wing, and then eventually moved him into nine and moved Hardy out of the way so Wales could win the game. But um, so it's definitely something I think can do. He's quick and he's got a nice boot as well if you get ball wide and can get out of it. So
Yeah, and then I think we all agree on Lloyd in the 23 jersey then as like a proper Swiss Army knife of a guy. But yeah, I think if it goes to plan, he would just come on for Sheedy there like 60 minutes and just add a bit more tempo and a bit more of a running threat himself from 10 then as well. Good stuff. So just to recap our team then, uh, go from 1 to 15. We've got Reece Barrett, Liam Belcher, Kieran Azarati, Josh McNally, Teddy Williams, Alex Mann, Tame Basham, and Alan Lawrence up front. We've got Johan Mulder, Callum Sheedy, Tom Bowen, Ben Thomas, Harry Millard, Josh Adams, and Cam Winnett in the back line. And then on the bench, we've got Evan Lloyd, Danny Southworth, Javan Sebastian. I'm going to go for the big forwards of Knott, Thornton, and Donnell as the six forwards, and then Ellis Bevan and Johan Lloyd as the back cover. I think 40, that's a team that can certainly get the win on the weekend.
Yeah, let's hope so. Does worry me in terms of there's not many other big name players in reserve there in terms of on the
Yeah.
standby list, but yeah, I think it's a very, very good team and a very solid team.
Good stuff. Tone, anything else? Anything to add?
I was just going to ask, do you reckon we could have Sheedy starting the game in a scrum cap? And then when the kicking happens, he sneaks into the terrace and outruns Halfpenny in another number 10 Cardiff shirt. Um, and we go from there. Maybe that's what the plan of why Halfpenny's hanging around the side and why they didn't want him in the Worcester photo, so it was quickly taken down.
I haven't. I don't know if they've announced the referee appointments for this weekend yet, but there are definitely some URC referees who would allow that to happen. I feel like I liked. I don't know if you saw this week they announced that the 20-minute red card is coming to the URC in some sort of trial mode. In it, the slight difference I think in the way they're putting it in than like the Prem and the top 14 is that. Um, there is a sort of review process which the others don't have. Previously, we've seen it at international level where it goes to the bunker and there's like a whole other referee in the bunker waiting for that. Whereas in the URC, it'll go to the TMO to review whilst the yellow card period happens, and he will go back to the referee. And there was I forget who it was now, but it's like an English media guy who said very strange this, like the TMO will be reviewing it, but won't he be keeping an eye on the game? And there was just a flood of comments of like, it's okay, it's the URC, he doesn't keep an eye on the game anyway. Like he doesn't do anything else. But yeah, if we get one of those sort of refereeing teams, if there's like a bunker going on and the referee's like got his head planted firmly up his backside, we might get away with half penny coming on. Good stuff. Thank you, gents. We will be back next week as the season gets properly underway with the panels coming on every week. We'll be looking back on the Lions game. We'll touch on the Rags in the middle of their Ebbw Vale double header and look forward to that game away at Munster the following week. But until then, thank you, Fordy. Thank you, Tony, for joining me. And thank you at home very much for listening. We'll catch you next week.